Welcome back to Genuinely LAS. My name is Luke and I'm stood right next to what appears to be a Volkswagen T7 multivan. But it actually has a bit of a trick up its sleeve. Watch this. Welcome to the new Volkswagen California Campervan. Now there are three different trim levels on offer. We have beach, coast and ocean. Now personally I think beach is a write-off. You don't even get a hob inside the van, you have to extend it out of the boot, which I think just don't even bother really. This is coast the mid-range model, which I think is the pick of the range, and we'll get kind of into why that is later. We'll talk about price, I promise you that. And ocean, top of the range. I mean, all the bells and whistles, but do you really need that? Do you need that extra expense? Now, a few notable things about the Coast model. We get 17-inch rims, which means nice chunky tyres, which do help a little bit with the ride quality. It's still not fantastic. All the doors are manually operated, whether it be automatic or electrically operated within the Ocean. We do get an electro-hydraulic opening roof box, which you don't get on the beach model. Just another reason to just kind of ignore that entirely. What I thought most of the benefit would be from the electrically operated hydraulic roof box was that you could close it from the car and not have to worry about it kind of at all when you do that. But after a couple of experiences in relatively windy conditions, you find that part of the roof box will get caught between the gap. So you have to come and normally check it yourself. It's a little bit frustrating. I mean, it doesn't take up too much time, but if you don't check and you forget to do it, the wind noise is quite significant whilst you're on the move, especially on the motorway. So I've done it, please don't do it yourselves. Now there have been a number of big changes made for the new campervan, but that certainly has to be one of them. Two opening doors, and on the top spec Ocean model, these are electrically operated. Now this definitely does improve the ease of access in and out of the van for, well, families especially, but I've got to say, I think the kitchen might have taken a bit of a hit as a result. Now the new California has been designed around a 3-room concept. So imagine one room here, one room inside, and then one room on the other side, outside, with optional awning. Obviously we're covered on this side. Now, this is all well and good, and as you can see, there's a table that folds out, but if you're in LA or you're in Las Vegas or somewhere hot all the time, this is a really cool idea and a really cool concept. But if you live in the UK and you want to have a nice winter getaway, that almost immediately writes off 2 of the 3 rooms. And on top of that, you only get 1 gas hob. So if there's 4 of you and it's cold outside, 1, cooking is going to take forever, and 2, there isn't actually that much space at all, unless one of you clambers into the roof box for the sleeping area roof box, which is not super cozy when it's windy and the whole thing's getting buffeted. So, I don't know. I think what surprises me more than anything is that obviously not only the fact that there is only 1 gas hob, but the fact that the 1 hob is an induction hob of some sort. Maybe that would drain the battery, maybe that's why, but it just feels like that was an opportunity missed. Rather than having to carry around a gas tank to operate or to cook with, that surely could have been storage space used for something else. That's a little bit disappointing. Now, paint choice is a really interesting one with the California, because as sleek as it looks in general, I think this really is pure van spec. I mean, grey and black, I mean, it looks like a van. What you can do, and what I have seen actually, is a multi-van with 2-tone paint. I think it looks really cool, and I think bright colours really work on this. Although the price is something that has to be really factored in. So if you would like 2-tone paint, but you want your colour change to happen here, that will cost just under £1,400. And if you would like your two-tone paint change to start around here, you're looking at almost £3,000. That's a massive expense for a little bit of vibrance. And I'm thinking, if you're got this car on finance, you're thinking about the resale value and you're worried about colours, you probably will then end up with something like this, which is a massive shame, because the brighter the colours, I think, the better this thing looks. Now, as I mentioned, the doors are all manually operated. Fresh water goes in here. The boot is actually a relatively decent size. You can see the mattress just on the side here. We also get some storage in here, which is pretty good going. It's quite a sleek package, this. I'm not sure if it's the most spacious, but it feels pretty sleek. This is quite a big unit. It's just under 5.2 meters in length, which means that when you are trying to park it in a normal sized car park, it does feel like a bit of a beast to maneuver, and it most of the time hangs out of some of the bays. It's also got a maximum towing weight of up to 2 tons, and the tow hook weight is 80 kg. First, I think we should talk about driving around town, just milling around as you would do any normal car or van. For a decent chunk of people, you probably won't be spending most of your time doing this, because it will be something that you kind of take right from your house straight to a campsite or on a road trip. But for a lot of people as well, this would be a daily drive, because this isn't a cheap vehicle. So I think there's some main points to cover. And what I want to cover first of all, really, is probably the gearbox, in all honesty. I'm just not a fan. Around town, I just don't think it's actually very good at all. Now, this has got a 7-speed DSG gearbox, which in a way you think would be relatively fast, if not the most rapid, at least fairly competent. It does quite regularly feel that the gearbox just doesn't really know what gear it's in. It's pretty sluggish, it's slow, it feels clunky, especially when you're pulling off from a stop. The car also, a quick side note, does love to cut off the engine in a start-stop situation. When the engine restarts, you have that jerking motion. That's not really very nice. So I'm not a massive fan of the gearbox. I'll be interested to see if it feels different on the motorway, where it could maybe be a little bit more at home. On the engine front, we have 2 different 2-litre 4-cylinder engines. We have a 2-litre petrol engine and a 2-litre diesel engine. The petrol engine you'll get just under 31 miles per gallon, and the diesel engine just under 42 miles per gallon. But it should be said that the petrol engine is just under £3,000 more than the diesel engine. Now, especially for this type of vehicle, I would go for the diesel anyway, so to then have to pay extra for the petrol seems like a non-starter in the first place. I feel like, considering this car is just under 2.9 tons, I think the 2-litre petrol could feel a little bit anemic, whereas diesel is going to pack a larger punch and better efficiency, which would be nice, considering you're probably going to be putting quite a few miles on this. I also think one of the largest gripes about new Volkswagens is infotainment. And in here, you've got a little bit of a mesh between new and old Volkswagen, which I think is a win, in a sense. It's a little bit of a win. It could be worse. What we have got is, on the steering wheel, we've got physical buttons all over. These cover your main features: your adaptive cruise control, volume buttons, skipping song buttons, your voice recognition. So I'm pretty happy with that. My problems begin when you move to the center console, the main screen, for example. So with the main screen, we have touchpad buttons for the volume controls and the air conditioning, the temperature controls. Now, the volume control situation is a little bit mitigated by the fact that I have access to it on the steering wheel. But the temperature controls are a nightmare. I mean, having to try and use this touchpad during the day is hard enough, but interestingly enough, at night, when the lights are on and your buttons are all illuminated, the volume controls and the temperature controls on the main dash don't light up. So if you try and drive at night, trying to use the controls, you're thinking, you can't see anything, and there's no haptic feedback, so you don't even know if you're pressing anything. You have to kind of hope and pray, and that feels a little bit dangerous. It feels like you can only operate it when you pull over. The rest of the infotainment system is about as faffy as you would expect from the new Volkswagen tech. And to be honest, I really think I've been trying to avoid it, just trying to focus on using the wireless Android or Apple CarPlay, and you also get wireless Android Auto, because otherwise delving into the menus is such a faff. Luckily, the buttons for the roof box and the battery check are physical buttons. I don't see why they couldn't have had more. They've also got 2 parking brakes. You've got 2 electronic parking brakes. You've got one right by the steering wheel, and you've got one down by your shin. It's not bad going. 2 buttons for the price of 1. But would you have preferred a physical parking brake? That's the question. And the ride quality of the California is also quite an interesting predicament. When you're at speed, or you're kind of cruising down a motorway or an A road, it feels nice and smooth and very relaxing and easy to drive. But when you're going around town, it really does feel like it thuds around. It doesn't feel particularly comfortable, and it doesn't help that you've essentially got a mini kitchen unit at the back. So without any cutlery in this, I can still hear what feels like the thudding and the bouncing around and the shaking of the units in the back, which makes it quite a noisy drive. Fortunately, Volkswagen have probably realised this, and for the pricey sum of £1,300, you can buy adaptive dampers. Now, personally, I would go for them if I were you in this, because it just you probably spend a lot of time around towns, shuffling around. You want to give yourself a little bit more comfort. It's probably, of all the things I would spec on this, that is definitely out there as a certainty. You're going to get a few different driving modes as well. I don't know how often you'll really use them, but we get comfort, an eco, a sport. Now, as I've said, the gearbox is not fast in the first place, so you can only imagine how sporty it must feel. So unsurprisingly, it doesn't feel very sporty when you're using the manual paddle shifting. So I'll probably stay clear of that. It really does feel like it takes a couple of seconds between your shift and anything actually happening. So yeah, unless they release a GTI, GTX model, I just wouldn't even get involved. When you're on the motorway, it is a fair chunk better, which is for the best in a way, because right now, if you're making these kind of journeys, if you're going to get one of these, you'll probably spend a lot of time on the motorway. In that sense, it kind of fits the bill for a bit of a cruiser spec. I've got a nice armrest here, nice high seated position. I'm very relaxed. It's all very chilled out. It would probably add to the cost of this car, but if they had an option where you can have massage function seats, I think that would be quite a nice touch. I'm not sure how it would work with the swivel chairs, but I think it would be quite a nice touch for people, especially for long journeys. On the motorway, the TDI engine's got everything you kind of would want from it. It's punchy enough for a diesel. It has a nice little bit of a kick when you really put your foot down. You get the kick down. But at this pace, it is pretty peaceful and smooth. Not that that could be said for the rest of the car, which, if you can't really tell, I just have to shout a little bit because of the wind noise you can hear from the kind of roof box room compartment on top. Now, I did try and make sure I double checked if this is closed properly as well, because it's very easy when you're lowering the extension of the room extension. It's very easy to not close it properly at the top, and that kind of brings a bit of cold air in and a bit of wind noise. But even with it properly closed now, I can still hear a fair chunk of wind noise, which is it's disappointing, but I also don't really know how much better it could be. The steering is a double-edged sword. When you're driving around town, it's really nice and you feel like it's a quick rack for something so large, you feel like it's pretty manoeuvrable. But it does mean at higher speeds, it doesn't weigh up. It feels floaty. Especially with today, it's been a really windy day. Whenever there's a bit of a battering from the wind and you feel like you're correcting the steering, it feels like it's so used to overcorrect, and then you're kind of in a bit of a seesaw motion. And what is really interesting on the startup, when you do hear the diesel kick in, you think, oh god, this is going to be a bit of a noisy experience, because it is a bit of a racket when you start it up. But yeah, when you're running at speed like this, 2,000 revs, it's smooth and it's easy enough to drive. The digital dash is also nice and clear. You have, as you have in all modern cars now, or in all new cars, you have a speed sensor alert. It's actually really quiet. I mean, it's surprisingly quiet. Sometimes you think it could just be a notification you get on your phone or something. You just don't really hear it. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, look at the state of this, man. Unbelievable scenes. But I will say, I'm continuing to very much enjoy driving the multivan T7 California Campervan. It's so relaxing. It's so smooth on the motorway. Which the sun set at 2:30 in the UK. What a time to be alive. But yes, thumbs up for the driving. I mean, look at them. I've got padding for my elbow on the door. Got an armrest for my other arm. I've got a footrest for my foot. My cup's got a cup holder. Everywhere's rested and relaxed. Well, I've just arrived at Stubcroft Farm campsite. There's only one other person at this campsite, but that's what you get for a late December arrival. It's very windy outside. It's pretty breezy outside. It's pretty chilly as well. But so we are sat in the oasis of light and warmth inside the California. And I wanted to talk about something that I think I didn't mention earlier, and that's price, because the coast, which we are currently in now, starts at £70,000. If you get the options that I probably would go for myself, two-tone paint, adaptive dampers, you're looking at something, you're easily at £75,000. For only £2,000 more, yes, you can get an Ocean. If you were to pay £7,000 more, you could get a Grand California, and that's a much bigger vehicle than this. So I guess you have to consider that if you wanted to have this as a day-to-day vehicle, maybe this is still the one for you. But £7,000 more for, you know, quite a big step up in terms of space, I guess, amenities, as you could call it that, is something I think you'd have to consider. I also don't really know what kind of people would go for this. One, because of the price point, and the size means that if you're going to get one of these to live in, I don't really think there's enough space in here, unless you're kind of a solo camper in that regard. But if you're then looking at that, would you not just look at a T6? Because the T6, the generation before this, is massively popular. And I don't know if this will have the same level of appeal as the T6. And I think if you have a nice T6, you could be quite happy about the value probably staying relatively good. It's an interesting one. And as well, you've also got the Ford Transit, I think, Custom Nugget, which is their version of a California. And I think price-wise, that's also very similar to this. I think you have to consider that as an option. I do also think from the photos I saw that has two hobs rather than just one gas hob like we have here. So that could potentially be a viable option for family, or more viable option for families. Volkswagen have spoken about in the second half of the decade having an ID Buzz campervan, but I think that will be a bit of a nightmare considering the extra weight and the weight of the batteries. I think the range will be pretty in the bin, and then you have to find a campsite where you can charge, and if you can, that's fine, but if you can't, that's tricky. Looks wise, I personally prefer the looks of the ID Buzz. So I would love to see what a California Buzz would look like. So maybe I'd hold out for that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a long day of rain, wind and sun. So I think I'm going to take a second, have some food, change into my comfy clothes and bask in this experience a little bit more.